The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to St. Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples,
"You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified."
Meanwhile, the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest Caiaphas and discussed a scheme to seize Jesus and put him to death. But they said,
No, not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people.
Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly perfume. She poured it on his head as he sat at the table. And when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said,
"Why this waste? The ointment could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor."
But Jesus, aware of this, said to them,
"Why do you trouble this woman? It is a fine thing that she has done for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this perfume on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed throughout the world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her."
Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said,
"What will you give me if I betray him to you?"
They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray Jesus. On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying,
Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?
"Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'"
So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, Jesus took his place with the 12.
"Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me."
Surely not I, Lord. Surely you do not mean me.
"One who had dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man is going the way appointed for him in the Scriptures, but woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man not to have been born."
Then Judas, who betrayed him, spoke.
"Surely not I, Rabbi."
Jesus replied,
"You have said so."
During supper, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to the disciples, and said,
"Take, eat. This is my body."
Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying,
"Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood, the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom."
After singing the Passover hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them,
"Tonight you will all lose faith of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go with all of you to Galilee."
Peter replied,
Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you.
Jesus said to him,
"Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Peter said,
Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you.
and so said all the disciples.
Jesus then went with them to a place called Gethsemane.
Sit here while I go over there to pray."
He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee. Distress and anguish overwhelmed Jesus, and he said to them,
"I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me."
Going a little farther, Jesus threw himself on the ground and prayed,
"My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass me by. Yet not my will, but yours."
He came back to the disciples and found them sleeping.
"What? Could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray, that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Jesus went away for a second time and prayed.
My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.
Again he came and found them sleeping. He prayed for the third time, saying the same words as before. Then he came to the disciples and said to them,
Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? The hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hand of sinners. Get up, let us go. My betrayer is at hand.
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a great crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent by chief priests and elders of the people. The betrayer had given them a sign, saying,
The one I will kiss is your man. Seize him.
Going straight up to Jesus, Judas said,
Hail, Rabbi!
Then Judas kissed him, and Jesus said,
Friend, do what you are here to do.
They came forward, laid hands on Jesus, and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. But Jesus said to him,
Put up your sword, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. You think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will not at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how would then the scriptures be fulfilled?
Jesus said to the crowds,
Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled.
Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. Peter followed from him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said,
This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.
The high priest stood up and said,
Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?
But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to him,
I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us, are you the Messiah, the Son of God?
Jesus said to him,
You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Almighty and coming on the clouds of heaven.
At these words, the high priest tore his robes and exclaimed,
This is blasphemy. Do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?
They answered, He is guilty.
guilty.
He deserves death.
Yeah, he should die.
Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying,
Prophesy to us, you Messiah.
Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside in a courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said,
You also were with Jesus the Galilean.
Peter denied it before all of them, saying,
I do not know what you're talking about.
When he went out to the gateway, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders,
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
Once again, he denied it with an oath.
I do not know the man.
Shortly afterwards, bystanders came up and said to Peter,
Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you.
At this, Peter began to curse, and he swore to an oath.
I do not know the man.
At that moment, the cock crowed. And Peter remembered what Jesus had said, Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring him about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders.
I have sinned. I have brought an innocent man to his death.
Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, Judas departed, and he hanged himself. The chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said,
It is not lawful to put this into the temple fund. It is blood money.
After conferring together, they used the silver to buy the potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, and they gave the silver for the potter's field as the Lord commanded.
Jesus was now brought before the governor Pilate.
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus said.
The words are yours.
But when Jesus was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him,
Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?
To Pilate's great astonishment, Jesus refused to answer, not even to a single charge.
At the festival season, it was customary for the governor to release one prisoner chosen by the people. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So, after they had gathered, Pilate said to them,
Who do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?
For Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy and malice that the people had handed him over. When Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him,
Have nothing to do with that innocent man. For today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him.
Meanwhile, the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for the release of Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them,
Which of the two do you want me to release for you?
Barabbas.
Barabbas!
Barabbas.
Barabbas!
Barabbas!
Then
Barabbas.
what should I do with the Jesus who is called the Messiah?
Let him be.
Let him be crucified!
Crucified.
Why, what harm has he done?
But they shouted all the more,
Let him be
Crucify him!
crucified.
Him.
When Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying,
My hands are clean of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
Then the people as a whole answered, His blood be on us and on our children.
Pilate then released Barabbas, and after flogging him, Pilate handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him, put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they placed it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand, knelt before him, and mocked him, saying,
Hail, King of the
Hail,
Jews.
the King of the Jews.
They spat on him and used the reed to beat him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to be crucified. On their way out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry Jesus' cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, This is Jesus, King of the Jews. 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads, saying,
You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself.
If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross.
In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying,
He saved others, but he cannot save himself.
He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and then we will believe in him.
He trusts God. Let God deliver him now if he wants to, for he said, I am God's son.
Even the bandits who were crucified with Jesus taunted him in the same way.
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, when Jesus cried with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.
that is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said,
This man is calling for Elijah.
At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, soaked it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to Jesus to drink.
Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him.
Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, rocks split, tombs opened, and many of God's saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, they came out of their tombs and entered the holy city where many saw them. When the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and they said,
Truly, this man was the Son of God.
Many women were also present, looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own unused tomb, which he had cut out of the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, the morning after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said,
Your Excellency, we remember what that impostor said while he was still alive. After 3 days, I will rise again. Therefore, command the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may go and steal him away and tell the people he has been raised from the dead, and the last deception would be worse than the first.
Pilate said to them,
You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can.
So they went with the guard and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and posting a guard.